Antes de passar para o inglês, só dar as boas-vindas a todos, a mais umas conversas com urbanistas. Hoje temos uma sessão especial e que será falada em inglês. Portanto, também fazia já a nota também que, como é habitual nestas sessões, a sessão será gravada e, portanto, quem não concordar terá que sair na medida que a sessão será gravada. E, portanto, passando para o inglês, I would like to welcome everyone to this special session of Conversas com Urbanistas. This is a very special and very interesting session we are doing today, which is the presentation of the Portuguese version of a document that ECTP, so the Conselho Europeu de Urbanistas, did almost 10 years ago on the guidelines on professional competence in spatial planning. And as I said before in Portuguese, this session will be recorded because we will share it later in our YouTube channel. But I would like first to thank Fundação Serra Henriques, which is a very big support to APU, the Portuguese Association, and in a lot of logistics and other issues. And I would also like to thank Paula Pacheco and Alexandre Teixeira, which were the active agents in translating the actual document, and also to thank to Isabel Costa Lobo and João Cabral, who did some the final reviews or the review of the document. Today we have um, um, two speakers. But before that, the APU's president, Manuel Miranda, will say a few words. But our speakers are Hendrik van der Kamp and João Cabral, which I will introduce in a little while. But I would just like to make some quick notes that all this started with who was then the president of ECTP, who is now the Secretary General, which is Marcos, that suggested that we could a Portuguese association could translate this document to Portuguese, because right now I think the document exists in English and in French and in Spanish, and it was his suggestion that kicked off all this process. And so here we are presenting this document in Portuguese, and I think it was as relevant as it when it was developed a few years ago, and it's very important to 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 think and to debate what are the competences of an urban planner, especially with all the challenges that exist right now in our world, the climate crisis, all the things about the environment, the migration, all the technology and digital transformation, the participatory processes. So a lot of matters that are very important these days. And so the speakers we have today um, are, have both a long career, both teaching and in practicing. And I think there is a very good bridge between what they will present to us, both on the Portuguese reality and in the European reality. So João Cabral is an associate professor, now retired, in the Faculty of Architecture in the University of Lisbon, and he holds a PhD in Urban and Regional Studies from the University of Sussex, and he has extensive experience in the fields of architecture and urbanism, with the emphasis on urban and regional planning. He is also currently part of the board of the EXCO of APU, um, um, on the current EXCO. Hendrik is a town planner. He graduated in Eindhoven, and he worked as a planner for most of his professional life. And as I mentioned before, he lectured in the University of College in Dublin and the Technology University of Dublin, where he started the first undergrad course in spatial planning in 2000. He was president of the Irish Planning Institute, and he was also the president of ECTP some years ago, and he has just left the post of being the Secretary General also in the ECTP. Now I pass to Manuel Miranda to do some remarks, and then we'll go to the actual presentations of João and Andrew.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Just a few words of welcome. So on behalf of APU, it is the Portuguese Association of Urban and Spatial Planners, I would just like to thank everyone to be present and to participate in this event, and especially to the two speakers of this session, Eric van der Kamp and João Cabral, for their commitment to prepare and present their papers at this session. I'm certain that everyone recognizes the importance of good definition and clarification of professional skills in our area of the spatial planning. So I think that what is the best is to hear. Por favor, desliguem microfones.
Mas então não arranjamos mais meias?
Não, tiramos
Luís Alexandre, penso que o microfone está ligado.
Você começa a dar dinheiro, não?
Não, aí distribuímos.
Luís Alexandre, peço que desligue o microfone, por favor. Peço que desligue o microfone que está a interferir. Bom,
mas chegaram prendas?
Estão ali algumas coisas, eu acho que são almoçados.
So I was saying that I think what is best is to pass the word for our speakers. Por favor, Luís Alexandre, por favor, desligue o microfone. Estamos a ouvir aqui a interferir. Okay, thank you. So I think what is best is to hear what our speakers have to say about this subject. So the word is for them. I think the first one is João Cabral, I think. Okay, João. Thank you very much.
It's fine with him, but I think it's Hendrik first.
Yes, it's Hendrik first, I think. Yes. So I will share them.
Well, thank you, both speakers, and thank you for speaking in English. I am probably the only person who doesn't speak your language here. And thank you for inviting for this very interesting document, I think. And congratulations for the translation. It's nice to see that happen. I'm going to speak about this document, but I'm concentrating on the diagram. Next one, please. And the diagram was developed before the document was developed. This is what happened before the document was adopted in 2017. It actually started with your João Teixeira, who was president of the ECTP. And when he became president, he asked me to chair a working group to develop the research in the professional planning qualifications in Europe. And that was 2010. And in 2011, we had some finance. So we were able to recruit a researcher. And we published a stage 1 study, which is or should be on our website. And this was really to investigate the potential for mutual recognition for planning qualifications so that young people could travel across Europe with their degrees, and also to develop a common platform that was defined in the EU directive, similar to other professions. We did that, and then we followed it up with a stage 2 study, which is much more detailed, and that then developed into the 2017 adoption of the advisory guidelines that you have translated. Next slide, please. And what you will see is that the stage 2 study report started to use this diagram that I'm going to talk about today as a way of comparing educational courses in planning across Europe. And we took one course from every member country of ECTP. We had 25 countries. We called it an exemplar course. Mightn't be the best course, but just the dominant course in the country, the one best known. And we then prepared a manual of skills based on the syllabus on the website. And we compared that with other programs by translating it into this diagram of 8 competencies. Next slide, please. And this allowed us to standardize the length of a qualification. The stage 2 report actually has a picture like this for every one of the 25 programs that we analyzed. And I've just picked the Portuguese one. And if you see the bar diagram at the bottom, that is based on the ECTS credits divided by the total number of credits of the program. Some programs were 240 credits or 180 credits or 300 credits. But by using the common standard of the ECTS, the European Credit Transfer System, and by dividing it by the total number of credits in the program, we could standardize the proportion of each of the competence categories. So, for example, we looked at this program, and I'm not sure whether we were right, but we found there was no planning theory in it, so it got 0%, whereas planning instruments got 15% because of the 18 ECTS credit, and that would have been divided by the total number of credits in the program. And this is what we did for every program. And you see the red lines in the bar diagram. They were, I think, the average across Europe, so that each country you could compare that specific course against the average. Next slide, please. So that diagram then was used in that stage 2 report, and then we said, well, maybe we can use it to develop this document that will help countries to define planning education in their own country. This is the cover of the guidelines that you have now translated. And on the right-hand side, you see the diagram, which I'm going to explain now in more detail. Next slide, please. So the diagram is based on these 8 categories. And I developed this diagram when I set up a planning course. Jao mentioned in 2000, we started an undergraduate, the first undergraduate course in Ireland. And I designed that program. And in preparing for the syllabus, for the curriculum, I thought, how do you explain what courses, what subjects need to be taught in a planning course? And the first thing we said, what I thought was relevant, was the planning product, that it is a creative profession. Because sometimes we are compared with economics, for example, or with social science. And I felt that what set planning always apart, which made it different, was that it was always a creative. No matter what type of planner, the planner always creates a plan, and that is about change. And therefore, the planning product is always a spatial vision. But that spatial vision can be a micro vision, for a small area, like a town square or a town or a village, but it can also be a plan for a region or even a country. And we use the term territoire because regions mean different things in different European countries. So in ECTP, we decided that the French word territoire was a better word to use. So the keywords here were the creativeness of the profession, the vision, the fact that the planning product is an image of where you want to go for the future, and also that it is about an area. It can be a small area or a large area, but it must be space related. Next slide, please. That was the central one. But we also then, when I developed this diagram, I said, yes, but the planning product needs to be justified. Why do we make a plan? And the student needs to understand why we are changing the environment. Why are we intervening in the market? Because planning is usually intervention. And we do that because protecting the environment or for economic reasons, to develop the economy of an area, or for protecting heritage, for example, buildings or landscapes. And these reasons often have to do with the common good, the public interest versus private interest, but they also have to do with ethics and politics and responsible behavior. And the students needs to understand that. And that's what we call the why of planning, rationale for the product. So that comes before we start the planning product. Next slide, please. So there we have two, and then we have three more on the left-hand side. I felt there were really three types of spatial systems, I call them, that the planner needs to understand, to study, before we can design the product, the plan. Of course, we have to study the built environment. We need to understand the existing buildings, the infrastructure, the hardware, if you like, of the city or the town. But we also need to understand, which is often forgotten, the socioeconomic, the content of the area, the software, and the way the buildings are used. Are they used for economic development, for economic activity, business, or for shelter, for housing, for entertainment, or for recreation, etc.? And then the third one, of course, increasingly important, is the natural environment, and in particular the environmental systems, ecosystem services, the biodiversity, the need for ecological networks, and of course climate change challenges. So the diagram then says, before you start designing the planning product, you need to study these three spatial systems. And they together form the input into the intervention. Next slide, please. So there we have 5 competences so far, and then the 6th one is on the right-hand side of the diagram, that the planner, of course, uses techniques. Very often these techniques are borrowed from other disciplines, and we do this without any shame or problem. We use traffic engineering, we use the social survey techniques, we use economic modeling, GIS, geographical information systems. All these techniques the planner needs to be familiar with in order to use them to prepare the product. And in the guidelines, refer to this as quantitative and qualitative techniques. We also refer to the issue of problem definition. So there are more the softer techniques, collaborative problem solving, the need to work interdisciplinary way. So to use techniques that can use data from different disciplines. And of course, very traditionally, a skill in planning, a technique in planning, is to deal with alternative courses of action and to compare these evaluation techniques and plan generation techniques. Next slide, please. And then when the planning product is complete, based on the use of the techniques, the understanding of the rationale, and the studying of the 3 spatial systems, it needs to be implemented, because without implementation, the plan is just a theoretic device. And we use instruments. So again, the students needs to understand, after preparing a plan, making a plan, how do you get it to become reality? So the planner also needs to study legal instruments, administrative instruments, financial instruments, because we felt that these three types of instruments are relevant. Legal in the sense of the building permit and zoning regulations. Administrative, local government is of course the level where most planning takes place. The politics of local government, but also sometimes special organizations set up for urban renewal or for development of an area, like development agencies. And then the financial instruments, and that can be carrot and stick. So carrot would be tax incentives, for example, and the stick might be penalties or fiscal measures for land valuation, land taxation. And they are the instruments. And then we have a final, next slide, please. The research is sitting there in the corner, because when we devised the guidelines and when I set up this undergraduate degree, I said to the people I was addressing, planning is not a what we call a skill on its own. It is actually a discipline, and a discipline with a strong research focus. And the student needs to do usually a thesis at the end, to do a bit of independent research. And that means literature survey, skills in data collection, and independent objective analysis. And of course, also the need to distinguish between facts which can be proven and values which are based on opinions and political priorities, which in planning is very important. So the research is an added dimension to the diagram, and together they make up the 8 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yes, of the competencies. Next slide, please. And what I like in particular about this diagram then is that we can also illustrate the dynamic nature of planning, the cyclical nature of it, because the green arrows here show how the inputs into the planning product, ultimately leading to the implementation, are followed by the red arrows, which means, in theory at least, when the plan is being implemented, these spatial systems will change. We will have a different natural environment, a different built environment, and a different social environment. And of course, the environments are changing anyway because of the time that passes. And in planning, we always say we have to start again. So the red arrows illustrate going back to the start. We might change the rationale. There might now be a different reason for intervention or a different focus. Previously, it might have been economic rationale, but now it might be more climate action rationale or housing need rationale or migration policy rationale. And that can lead to a different planning product, and then the whole cycle starts again. Next slide, please. So when the diagram was done, and in fact, when I was president of ECTP and did some international meetings and used it, I found it was very easy to explain planning in this way. Often with language difficulties because of being in a different country, and which, you know, the diagram helped to overcome the communication difficulties. And a layperson could quickly grasp the multidisciplinary nature of planning, the fact that planners need to know a bit about everything. It also captures the cyclical nature of planning, which I've just described as the green and the red arrows, the continuation of the process in a continuous, what we sometimes call a process planning, and the creative nature by the planning products being central in the diagram. It also captures the philosophy of planning, because the why of planning is sitting at the top of the diagram. We always need to justify to the politicians, to the public, to our friends, and to our other professional colleagues why planning is important. We cannot take it for granted. That would be wrong. And it can be used as a framework, as I said before, to assess a curriculum, because that's exactly what we did in the Stage 2 report in 2016, 2011. So that was the value of the diagram. Next slide, please. And what is nice about once the guidelines were adopted, and now with the translation, it's really nice to see that the 8 categories are getting traction. That we did a survey a year later to find out from our own member associated categories what they asked for their members, what kind of criteria for membership in terms of education and experience. And that led to conclusions that there was a wide divergence in terms of the requirements. So in 2023, 5 years later, and I realize I'm now at it for 15 years, Marcus Heydorfer, as Jaro already mentioned, became president, and he suggested to restart the working group, and I chaired it for the last couple of years. And we have just presented the survey results of this piece of work, where we again have analyzed and surveyed what the different European countries require in terms of qualifications to work as a planner, both at senior level in the public sector and private sector. And we found that there is a wide divergence. But the same applies to the wide variety of planning courses that is on offer. And my conclusion from this is that really we have a little bit of a problem that both what you might call the supply side, the education side, but also on the demand side, the professional practice side, we don't have an agreed standard of what we expect a planner to know or to be qualified in. That is in a way a rich aspect of the profession, that it is interpreted in many different ways in many different countries. But it also weakens us a little bit, I think, at European level to convince the European Commission or the other professions like architects and engineers how our profession of planning is clearly defined. And this would be the next challenge, that we come to a more sharper focus on what should be required for a planner. But of course, the guidelines try to provide that focus. And we have achieved that, I think, by setting out these 8 categories in a very flexible way. We have indicated that we expect a planner to have at least a competence in each of these 8 areas. Not the same level in each course, in each country, but a certain amount, at least in each of the 8 categories that I have described. Next slide, please. And I would like to thank you again for this possibility to present this, which I really like doing. And my email address is there for any feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henk, for the presentation. I think it was very to the point and very useful. And I will pass to João Cabral for him to present.
Thank you very much for inviting me to do this, to talk about the case of Portugal. And thank you very much, Hendrik, for your presentation. In the end, we talked about agreed standards and the planning accreditation. It's I understand it's very difficult to get into that, because the tendency is more and more not to give accreditation to particular professions and to wide the system. So it happens with not only with planners but architects and engineers. Is kind of these liberal attitudes that you don't have less and less regulation. But so regulation or they say accreditation should come from competence needs. And I hope I can talk about a bit about that in case of Portugal and the challenges we have at the moment to discuss a bit further. Okay, so I'm organizing my presentation. Let's see if I change the slide. Okay. Well, I've realized that we don't have many, or probably none, people from outside. So the planning system was supposed to be here to introduce people from outside to the Portuguese system is not going to. I'm going to do that very, very quickly. So I probably, Hendrik, you know the system here and you know the case, but I'm not going to spend much time. And then I'm going to rely on 4 documents which have been produced recently and can have a good idea of the challenge taking place, which are very institutional and very political, because it has to do with this thing we are talking about the accreditation. And then I did this kind of framework to show the context in Portugal, putting together some of the inputs from from the guidelines and the other inputs from the other documents I'm going to show you. And in the end, we talk about the education and formation, something you were discussing at the end. I must say that the guidelines I was helping with the translation, and they're very useful, and they very you make it very simple, and they are very sophisticated in the requirements. The requirements the content of the requirements to be a good planner. And I think would be very useful for us to be on site and to use it for schools and for employers and the local authorities. So let's see. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going, as I said, I'm going quickly through this. Also, this presentation has lots of information. I'm not going to go into much detail, but I found useful to put all this information together. So in case, because this presentation is going to be online and probably the PowerPoints as well, so people from outside can get an understanding of the content of the presentation. So as you know, we have two tiers: national and central, national and local. And local are the 300 municipalities. We don't have regions. You don't have the intermediate level. You only have 5 planning regions, but they are central government. But on the right, I show you some interesting things which been happening, which is the intermunicipal communities and metropolitan regions, which have been able to put together some planning work. And here is just what is useful in this slide, that people can go and look into this report, Spatial Planning and Regional Development in Portugal, produced in 2021, and which has a lot of information about spatial planning and regional development in Portugal. And the diagram just shows the different levels and the different type of plans. What you have these regional plans, most of them are framework, and the so-called here the land use plans. These are regulatory and mandatory, municipal, urbanization, and local detailed plans. So I'm talking about this because most of the planning work in Portugal is not all of it, of course, strategic plans, all sorts of other planning work, but a lot of it is concentrated in the production of these plans and its production around the regulation of these plans. One, two. So the 4 documents, the first one is this declaration by the declaration of 33 and subscribed by 8 associations. Of course, the Association of Portuguese Planners, you can see here on the right, and you have the 8 association, and you have the Architects Association, engineers, local authorities, associations of 8 altogether. It's a long document, and what I've in the beginning, in the preamble, I pointed out 3 a few points about the state of planning and the state of things which have to be changed, and we might considering the procedural and institutional issues. We demand shared by public administration. This can be highlighted. The adoption of at territorial scales of forms of representation, organization, and participation of institutions and actors. So the problem of legitimacy and the problem of representation is crucial. The second one, the capacity building of the planners and the different actors, the different agents, regarding knowledge and access to the information in order to produce plans. And thirdly, the introduction to have a planning, to establish a planning culture and practice of changes, not only organizational, but also values, attitudes, and methods, which is a bit, this declaration try to emphasize issues which we are very concerned about, and that was subscribed by these 8 associations. So the next one, I picked up the other documents is put together by just for associations, but the planners, the landscape architects, the geographers, and another come from the law group of right and the legislation, and also the Association of Local Workers for the Local Authorities. And we put together 12 points about which were developed. Here I just picked up the titles, the contributions to the development of political programs, because we had local elections on May 18, 25, and we wanted to call the attention to crucial issues which could be integrated in the political programs of the different political parties. And I highlight here the 12, but these 3 first ones, almost they synthesize the main issues. First, restore the centrality of territorial planning, because with these liberal changes that individuals can make it through the planning procedures without much planning or evaluation and much control, I would say. So restore the centrality of territorial planning, make the preparations more effective, producing plans and revising plans more effective. And the third one, improve territorial governance and coordination between entities, because we have local authorities have certain capacities to do some level of work, but then you have you have to the permission from other different types of different bodies of the central government, and that's a big issue at the moment. So the other ones are linked with that to just make it more precise, some of the issues, so we can look at them later. So let's not go into that now. And then you have another two documents which are very recent. One is an inquiry, a very recent inquiry. It's not even completely finished yet, but done by the Laboratório Nacional de Engenharia Civil, and was presented. It's a collaboration between the laboratory, the National Laboratory, and this government department of territorial planning, and the inquiry was about the technical capacity of Portuguese municipalities in fields of architecture and landscape. And I picked up from the survey, and they did some of the conclusions, which says that the percentage of only 73, so two-thirds of the municipalities need training in urban planning and land management. They are in really need of that, and the training needs considered more pressing were on urban planning and land management legislation. 82% of the municipalities declared that they don't have capacity. And so the recommendations came obvious: promote the creation of technical support structures in fields of architecture, of course, but urban planning. And I'm going back into that at the end of this presentation, and also in relation to the end of the guidelines. And increase the availability of training programs, something which I'm going to talk later in connection with the guidelines which have been just translated. So, and the table on the right is the proposal for the creation of career path for urban planners in the public administration. Our association, the Planners Association, is putting together and submitting to the government a proposal to create this career path for urban planners. So technicians work for local authorities are not in different levels according to the complexity of the work they do, but also as part of, they have a particular, same way doctors have, and nurses, and in the other sectors of society, and of the public servants. And I'm highlighting here the one paragraph, and referring to recognition of the technical complexity and legal responsibility of planning work, and mentioning just the functions performed by urban planners involve, of course, coordination of territorial plans, development and coordination, so preparation and coordination, the reports, the planning permissions, which have legal and civil impact and a huge responsibility, and all the other types of plans, strategic, mobility, sustainability plans, and last but not the least, discussion of these various topics for training and updating with the professionals. I come into that, and this links with the issue I was talking about the end of the end of the. Let's see. The end of our talk. So I put together this table to summarizing and put together. This planning is also very political, as we know, and but also, so the politics of planning and the way the culture of planning is not well established or needs to be established, and decisions have a political side. The decision to make plans, it is in itself a political decision. But then but the dimension of regulation, which has to do with the everyday, from at different scales, plans, programs, the urban form, and the decisions on the development of urban regions and regional and the region in itself. And the third one, the governance issue, the implementation, the discussion with the agents. So these three dimensions I've divided into these three: politics, the regulation, and governance. And I link that with what in the guidelines, with the three primary needs. If people have looked into the guidelines, they have three primary needs, which then developed into eight core competencies, which was shown in the diagrams Henrik showed. And but these three primary needs can from which the core competence came out, like the technical and the ones Henrik mentioned. And the first one is the critical thinking, understanding of the rational planning. Well, the reflexive analysis of now how to learn the territory. The second one, understanding of the spatial systems which shape society and the environment, which have to do with the techniques, the social economic system, the built environment, the environmental systems Henrik talked about. And the third one, the technical and creative competences need to engage in planning practice. All the techniques, the instruments, the products, the research was shown in the diagrams Henrik showed, and which are at the end of the guidelines. And then in the middle, I have the challenge to spatial planning. I link that to the declaration of the territory, the one I just showed, and they. The first, I would say, some of the issues I mentioned, I'm going to repeat that, but for politics, the adoption at territorial scales of the representation and organization and participation of institutions, who is going to be responsible for what, and after all, the democracy of planning. And the second one, the capacity building regarding knowledge and access to adequate territorial information. So the capacity to produce plans, to have the knowledge to do the survey and make proposals. And then in terms of governance, the introduction into established planning culture and practice of change, not only in organization, but values, attitudes. This is a big, I think it's a big thing, and the links with when we mentioned the ideas to present to the political parties to build a political culture, to be that planning culture. Right? So on the left side, I kind of focus more on some of these aspects, and they can be summarized by the need of decentralizing development policies, guaranteeing institutional integration at all different levels. It's very political, but it's a big challenge in our at the moment, and that's has always been. And the second one, to adopt a place-based perspective. To a local, the plans should be based on a place-based information. So that reinforces the relevance again of the political and the function of planning, addressing development agendas through local approaches and methods. And the third one, to integrate all these issues in communicational practice and involvement of agents and communities, not only for formulation, but also through the preparation and also the implementation and the changes which and the evaluation, monitorization as well. So let's go back to this. Sorry. So we go back to now. We go back to the situation in Portugal, which has changed a lot. Aveiro, for example, you mentioned had the initial formation in urban and spatial planning, and that finished long ago. So at the moment, public universities do not offer at present first degrees in spatial planning and urbanism, similar to other European planning courses like in the United Kingdom. But you have degrees in territorial planning, and here you have a kind of survey of what is at the moment available in schools of geography, management, and there are a few master courses in planning in geography, engineering, political science departments, but and also in architecture, and traditionally architects have been involved and in working in local authorities and building up this expertise in planning, but it's very unequal the way different universities teach planning skills. So here you have a kind of survey, but that changes, not changes. It's a challenge for us to list accreditation courses like ECTP had some time ago, a list of the courses, because they are spread, like you mentioned that also in your presentation at the end. So master degrees in different types of city, urban, and different levels, and that it's an issue. And I come now to the final slide. As the inquiry showed, although with many deficiencies, that professionals with planning degrees and planning experience have always worked with, of course, with some deficiency depending on the local authorities and the regional departments of the central administration, have always worked for the local and regional administrations and have been involved in the production of plans and programs. And what we have here, and I think we have in most places, I report to the EU Compendium of Spatial Planning Systems, and they divide it into different tendencies, and they mentioned that planning practice in Portugal is both associated with the regional economic planning and urbanism approach, so more local, form-based, but also more strategic, financial. As I said, as I wrote here, the former relates to central government development policies, the first one, and the urbanism one is more influenced by planning laws and zoning regulations, so the production of land use plans. So the two approaches not only are rarely integrated in everyday local planning practices. You see in many local authorities, one side is the urban management, and you have the strategic planning on the other departments. So, but they have a strong influence upon local and regional development policies. And they, of course, they are the expression of two logics of intervention: a regional agenda concerned with the efficiency of public investments, and you need particular skills to do that. And the micro-municipal agenda concerned urban form, land use conformance to market dynamics, community pressures, and the urban property tax. So due to this particular structure, students, I don't think, but anywhere they cannot be adequately prepared for all the diversity of planning tasks. And in that sense, and following the training and formation should be developed in Portuguese municipalities, as the survey and inquiry showed, the emphasis on post-qualification is crucial, and I think we should, Henrik, we didn't mention that, but it's part of the guidelines. One is professional experience post-qualification, and the schedule, which in Schedule 2 of the guidelines, and they concern with three levels: the plan preparation, plan implementation, and research or teaching. So students, after their qualification, they have to develop, they're able to develop in the different areas where the different jobs and different employment they should develop this. They more or less develop these different kind of specialization. But continuous professional development is crucial for the planning. Recently, I know a bit about the UK system, and for architects, if you want to every year, if you want to maintain your accreditation as an architect, I don't know about planners, you need to show to follow course of continuous professional development, something which we know it's crucial, but it's not. You don't have here at the moment, but it's listed, and it's very strong in the guidelines produced by you and your team. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry it took longer than.
Thank you.
Thank you, João. Hendrik, I don't know if you want to do some comments before we open to the audience, or
Yeah, I would very much like to, and I'll keep it brief, but the last slide that you showed, Jarl, is a very common issue, that the regional economic strategies versus the planners who work on land management and governance regulation. And what we've tried to do in the diagram to say is that these are both planners. It is the planning product that counts, which can be a regional economic plan or can be a land use plan, and also that box instruments that every plan needs to be implemented. And very often the land management or the taxation side or the zoning is the instrumentation, the instruments box of the plan that has been prepared. So I think the diagram tries to merge these two understandings. The worst thing that can happen to the profession, I think, is that we say these regional economic planners are different people to the people who do the regulation in the land management in the local authority, the local municipality. We are all a part of the same profession. That's the point I wanted to make.
I entirely agree with you, but it's people come from different schools, and that's a big difference. In architects, architects, they have a 5-year program, and some architecture courses they have some work on urbanism, and they provide some tools, but not all of them. And this is different from the other, short courses, which were the planning work in terms of urban form and urban planning is not. They don't have tools, and they come out without no knowledge. It's different from the UK, which I know better, because you have. You have the planners come from the RTPA, the Royal Town Planning Institute, and the planning courses. They don't do planning work exactly. They do planning work, but not urban form, and that's it's a huge difference here. Okay. But it's not only here. I know Spain is the same, yeah, and France as well. Spain, they don't have planning courses either. Architects do most of the jobs.
Okay, so now we would open to the audience for any comments or questions. Does anyone want to be the first one? it's always hard for the to get the first person to do it. So I think I'll do some very quick comments until someone steps forward. I think that we are living in a world where obviously we are suspicious because this is what we do. We are urban planners, but planning matters and planners do matter in this world. And with all the competences we have and all the soft skills and not just that, I think we can be very helpful in connecting different parties and different visions and doing some bridges in between that. That was one of the things that the late Professor Costa Lobo, which is obviously known to the ECTP, which also had a role back then. That was something he was always talking about and teaching everyone. And I think that is very important at this world today. But I don't know if either João or Enrique or anyone else have any suggestions or positive things about what could be good examples that are currently happening in Europe in terms of this the courses and the competences and all the things and what maybe should change in order to make not making planners great again, but to make planners relevant again in this world. I don't know if we could maybe discuss that part. I don't know.
Yeah, may I respond, João? Yeah, I may misunderstand what you mean, but my biggest fear always is that we think we need to do everything and we can do everything. And the challenges are so enormous that the risk is that we end up doing nothing. You know, there's a famous article, if planning is everything, maybe it is nothing. This is the biggest threat to the profession, that we are seen by other professions as somebody who knows a little bit about everything. And the contribution to the world's problems is therefore diffuse. That's why the diagram is very critical or very specific in saying planning must always have a product that is creative. There must be a change from the present situation, and that's the central box in the diagram. But that can be different, very different shapes and forms. It can be an economic plan, it can be a climate action plan, it can be an urban renewal plan, and it can be an urban forum plan, simply trying to make compact developments, for example. Or it can be a three-dimensional urbanistic, architectural strategy for an area. All of these things comply with the requirement for the planning product, that it is creative and that it is about the future. Once you satisfy that, then all the other boxes fall into place. In order to do a plan, you need those inputs from the three spatial systems. You do need techniques, you do need the rationale, and you do need implementation. Without implementation, it's pointless. So I think as long as we as a profession stand over that competence, that we are a creative profession, no matter what the plan looks like, I think the difference between the UK type of plan and the Portuguese type of plan is irrelevant. They're both plans, you know, and that has been my firm opinion. And we keep coming across, as Marcus knows, in the working group, because the definition of planning is so different between the countries. But that's the one common thing. It's about spatial, it's about the future, and it's about creativeness.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, I wasn't saying that as planners we should do everything, because the risk you said it's very relevant, and we should bear that in mind. But what I was trying to say is that we always work in multidisciplinary teams, so we know how to connect with different people both in terms of what they do for a living, in terms of what they study in university, but also what they do professionally. And the examples you've been giving about the regional plan or the more local plan, it also shows how different things can be on different kinds of plans and different things that planners can do in their everyday life. Marcus, as you are the Secretary General of ACTP, do you want to add something to the table?
Yes, yes, of course. Thank you, João. First of all, congratulations for this important work, and we as the STPCU must encourage every association, every country to translate, to bring, not only translate, because it means it is a localization, so-called localization, which is a bit more than just translating from one language to the other, that every country should localize the guidelines, the terminology and so on to their languages, because we know that that many of our colleagues in our who are working in the municipalities, who are working in planning firms, who are working on the ground, as we say, do not know very well the English language. So they have often difficulties to understand what our English language documents say and so on. So for them, it's really it would be a big help to have all these documents in their own language they are dealing every day with. So this is one point. So every translation that is added to the list of translated documents is a very important step. The guidelines now are I think in 4 languages. In English, after English, it was immediately translated into Spanish. Then after a couple of years or so, the French version arrived, and now the Portuguese version. We don't have, so far as I know, we don't have other translations. And but we must go on also. We are discussing in Italy. We are discussing to translate something. We have already the list of competencies. We have made the first translation, but the whole document is not there because it's difficult. It's a very difficult work. Above all, finding the terminology, the correct terminology, and so on. It's really a big hard work. Oh, but I wanted to say something about education also specifically. I feel this is a very important thing. Yes, the planning systems in our countries are very different. Also, what planning is, what planning is, what is conceived as planning is somehow different from country to country. But I think we should ensure that there is a common base in all countries, so that we can say, okay, a spatial planner can be called a spatial planner only if they have actually what the guidelines say, but the guidelines are not such that translated into practice in education. And personally, I find it very important and that there is an initial education in planning, possibly a so-called full cycle initial education. So with the 3-year bachelor and the 2-year master's course, both things together, because I think that only a 5-year, or let's say at least a 4-year initial education can give all the competencies a spatial planner needs, actually. And today we aren't in that position. I see also my own country, Italy. We started in the 70s. We started with a very important, very good approach with a 5-year initial education with more or less 80% of of the fields defined centrally by presidential decree. So at the end, who had that grade in planning, as I have, had a very good, excellent education in planning at that time. Well, I graduated in 94, so it's more than 30 years ago, and things have changed. But with respect to what planning was 30 years ago, we received an excellent education at that time. Then things with the Bologna process changed a bit, because it was no longer necessary that a student who went to a master's degree in planning had also a bachelor's degree in planning, and all these things were changed also in Italy. And today I can tell you that, for example, out of the 120 credits for a master's degree, only 26 are so-called characteristic credits for spatial planning. So the universities have much liberty, much freedom to define their courses, their paths, their educational paths. And the result of this is that, for instance, in Italy, we have 2 or 3 bachelor grades, and the students that graduate from these bachelor courses actually, in my opinion, can't be defined as spatial planners, because they have, for example, there are 2 grades who are very close to agriculture. Another one is very close to construction, but they are not. They don't have an education as agronomists. They don't have an education as architects or geometers. Formally, they are spatial planners, but they don't have actually the preparation. They don't have the competencies in spatial planning. So this is a very big problem. Fortunately, talking about Italy, fortunately, the universities usually have good plans, have good courses, good approaches. So the lack from the side of the ministry is compensated to some extent, but this is only because the universities usually are doing a good job in this. So I see this is as the critical point, and we should push well, it's not always very good, because in many countries, including Italy, our associations are not very influent on the governmental side. We can't go. For example, my association, also, we can't go to the government and say, hey, please do this or that. We are not in that position. We are in a too weak position to do that, and this happens in many countries. Only a few countries have so strong planning institutions or organizations that they can communicate, that they can dialogue on that basis with their governments. So, but we must try, and one way to do this is, for instance, also, I don't know, I joined late to the meeting today. I don't know if it has been mentioned. One way is also through that European directive proposal for. We are working on, together with architects, engineers, and other professions, for the quality in professional services. So several professional services, including spatial planning, architecture, engineering, and so on, landscape planners. And this could be, I hope, I'm not sure, but this could be perhaps a way to push forward this idea of having good core competences, and to bring in our competence, the list of our list of competences we have defined in the guidelines. Well, I could talk about this for much time, because it's one of my favorite arguments. but I stop
Maybe,
here.
yeah, thank you so much, Marcus. We did have had a reference on the EU directive, brief reference, but we have APU's president, Manuel Miranda, wants to talk, please.
Okay. It's about everything was said in this discussion. I think it's very important to go back to the basics. And the presentation by Hendrik is very suggestive, mainly in the diagram that he had presented. I think this is the core of the problem and the core of the question. So I think that we have to incorporate in our thinking this diagram, all their dimensions, and I think that it will be the common ground for every country, and in each country for every aspect or every approach in these questions, for formation, education, for planners, for the technicians that are in municipalities that their work is mainly to manage the land use transformation. They know what planning is, but they are not the skills for elaborate a plan, for instance, but they are very important in this process. And I think they are planners, instead that they have not able to elaborate a plan, but it's not necessary to be a planner in a wide concept to they don't need to know how elaborate a plan to be an urbanist, a planner. So I think that this framework, this diagram is very important, and it will be the core of what everything we can do on trying to create a common thinking and a common approach for these questions. I think it's very important, and we have discussed it here in Portugal sometimes about the education, the formation, the courses that are, and of course there are masters, a few masters, but actually. Nowadays, they are mainly bachelor's courses that are very specific for management, land use, for tourism management, and so on, and agricultural management. And I think this diagram will be the first issue to put on these students, so they have to understand what planning is, and to understand what will be their place in this great diagram. I think it's very important, and it's the starting point for everything we can do on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. May I briefly respond to that, João, because that is such
Yeah, go ahead.
a really good way of understanding what I've meant with the diagram. Yes, it is exactly as you say, Alberto. And the diagram came out of a moment that I had when I was faced with this idea in planning a curriculum for a new planning program. What should be in it? And that's where the diagram comes from. What the diagram allows us to do, for example, is to say, and I'm responding to two things that previous speakers referred to. One of the things the diagram allows us to do is to say exactly what you say, Alberto. Not every person working in the planning system has to be a planner. You could work on the instruments box and be proud of that. I am implementing the plan, and that's what I'm good at. I'm a lawyer, that is what my specialization is. But that doesn't make the lawyer a planner. Now, the lawyer could be a planner if they can demonstrate that they also have competence in the other 7 boxes. But we're quite happy with a lawyer who just says, I'm doing the instrument. And it's the same with the politician. The politician is in the rationale box at the top of the diagram. The politician tells us why we intervene, and based on the values of the society the politician represents. And that is, again, completely valid. The politician is part of the planning system, but the politician is not a planner. And but the politician can go to a planning course, and some of the politicians in Ireland did exactly that. They came on my planning course, masters in from mid-career profile, and they wanted to be a planner, but they had to develop the skills in the other 7 boxes. They already had the skills in the rationale box, but not in the other 7. So, you know, this is what the diagram allows us to do. And as you say, Alberto, we can say to a bachelor course or to an architecture course, you can develop a planning course, but you're completely justified in specializing in urban design. You can say, this is our school research program. We are focused on this. This is our professors. The chairs are based on urban design, not about economic planning. But the students have to be taught those other elements as well. As long as a planning course does that, they can specialize. And this is what we've said to ASAP when we did this in 2014 or whatever, when we did the original stage 2 report with the bar graph. We said, as long as there is something in each of the bars, we are happy. And we defined maybe 5% of the credit should be in each of the competencies. I think that's the way to go. We can specialize courses, we can, and we can have people who work in the planning system but will never be planners. They're still part of the family of our colleagues.
And two remarks about this that I've forgotten to say. I think that's very important, the centrality of the planning product. I think it's very important. We have this is central. This is our centrality. And the other is that we are dealing with space.
Yeah,
space is very important. So these are the two, I think, the two main approaches that we have to keep permanently in our thinking, in our action. It's the centrality of planning product and the centrality of the space. We are dealing with space. Okay.
Agreed. Yep.
Okay, so as we are not running late, but we are already here for some time.
Very quickly.
No, I was going to say to João and Hendrik if they want to do some final remarks, and then I think we would close the session.
I just want to start the planning. I entirely agree, but when we mentioned to the political parties, one of the main objectives is restore the centrality of territorial planning, and because most people, most politicians don't get to the importance of territorial planning, and the planning product can be many things. And when I mentioned, I think this author, what's his name, Yat Chaffel, when he wrote that book about the three elements: the political debate, the formal debate, the product. The product can be many things. The product of the planning product can be many things. But before that, you have a political debate. What are we going to? What kind of product? What kind of aims? And most planners should be involved with these decisions beforehand, before deciding what the product is going to be about, what kind of. And that is Yatchaf talked about that the political debate, then the formal debate can be, and then the procedural, the process of getting into that. That's why I think it's very strong in Portugal. If you want to restore the centrality of territorial planning, a culture of planning, to be before have some tools to advise and to interfere in the development process, and link the different institution with different aims, the different policies, different type of investments. And it's very complicated, like in many countries, the bureaucracy and the structure of the state departments and local departments, and to manage to from this mess, I would say, this political mess, I would say, to come out with one or more ideas, and then the product, the form of the product will come out. And that's, you have to be very mature to do that, but that only works with time. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, and if I may make two final comments.
Go ahead.
I completely agree with Alberto. The planning product can be many things, many scales, etc., but must always be spatial. Completely agree. And I think otherwise you become economists or, social planners. We are not family planners, or we are spatial planners. And the other one is we must always justify the reason that we need to plan, because most of us are paid by the taxpayer. And the justification sometimes is left outside. Why are we really intervening in the market? And we need to keep telling the public we are important because of you, because of your children, your grandchildren, etc. And it's about the future. And the rationale and justification, we always have to put the forefront. So justification and spatial, two keywords for planners, I think. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to thank everyone, especially our speakers, João and Hendrik. I think it was a very interesting conversation, and obviously we invite everyone to read the guidelines documents either in English, in Spanish, in French, or now in Portuguese. It will briefly be in APU's website, and obviously in the ECTP website also soon. And I would like to also to share, or to share again, because it has already been shared, that in the autumn of next year, APU will host the GA of ECTP and all the parallel events, namely the Biennale, which is a very big event that occurs every 2 years, like the name says, and we all invite both our European colleagues and especially the Portuguese colleagues that are here or that may listen to this recording afterwards. So thank you to everyone, and we'll see you soon.